Dylan's Fear Files. So, I've never really told this because of the fact it's pretty close to a lot of fictional stories that exist. Maybe the concept is creepy, maybe this event was the basis for these stories. I don't really know. I just know that it's completely true. I was shown the newspaper clippings from the event when I was a kid. It was the late 1960s when this took place, so it was quite some time ago. It happened to my father when he was a boy. They had a swing set in their backyard. He would often wake up earlier than everyone else and go outside and play in the morning. So there was nothing too strange that morning when they heard him getting up and going outside to play, or the creak of a swing set. This morning though, my father opened the back door and ran outside into the foggy mist. He stopped in his tracks though, as he noticed a hunched over figure gently swaying on one of the swings. It was a little old lady. In his Polish household they called her a babushka, because the babushka the old ladies tied around their heads. She clutched in her arms a little brown paper bag. They were out there for some time, when finally my grandpa woke up and went to get a glass of water. As he sat there at the sink, he looked out the window over the kitchen sink and saw them in the backyard. The woman was clearly talking to my father. She whispered something in his ear and he got up to go to the door. The woman got up behind him and proceeded to follow him. My grandfather went to the door and opened it and stood there, letting his son pass him as he stared at the woman. As I am told, she stopped in her tracks and turned around and sat back on the swing. Then she smiled at him and went back to swinging. He shut the door, locked it, and told my father to go to his room and called the police. She sat there and waited the whole time. She never left, just kept swinging as the police showed up and talked to her. Now as you know, because like I said this is extremely similar to the creepypasta, when the cops looked in the bag it was literally just knives and rope. That was all. As I'm told it was a silly amount of knives too, like specialty knives, knives for boning, carving, butchering. My father wasn't around much when I was a kid. I was told this story by my grandfather when I was little and I instantly told him I didn't believe him even as a young child. So he went out and fetched a yellowed newspaper clipping, an excerpt from the paper. It had mentioned the lady, the knives, the rope, the swing set, everything. I've always thought it was weird later on in life when I read similar stories. It was like a popular concept, but I knew that it had happened in real life. My father never really told anyone exactly what they talked about. He did admit that what she had whispered to him as he got up was something to the extent of going inside so they could play with the whole family. He said nothing about anything else that they said, but they were out there for a while. My father died when I was 15. He was never in my life anyways, so I never really got any more details from him, but my aunt and grandfather had told me the story many times. My grandfather always seemed the most nervous about it. He didn't like the way she looked or the fact she just waited for the police. He said my grandmother had called her Baba Yaga, which was like this old country demon old lady that ate children, which weirdly enough is where the word babushka comes from according to some. They took down the swing set and everything after that, and my father wasn't allowed to go alone and play in the morning anymore. It was probably one of the creepiest things I've ever heard in my life, and it's been a story that stuck with me ever since I was young. One of those memories that no matter how old you get, it stays with you vividly. Early fogs in the morning have creeped me out every time. I'm always waiting to see her. So Baba Yaga, let's not meet. I've lurked here for quite a while and figured it's time I finally contributed my own story. Some background information. I work in retail. The store I work at isn't in the best neighborhood, and we're open until 10. After around 9, every employee except the cashier is usually helping to do the nightly closing things, so they're not on the floor, or if they are, it's only briefly because they're sweeping or something else. This is when my store was a lot slower, so we didn't generally have customers after 9. I was stationed at the register at the time, and I was 16 years old. Around 9:30, a customer came into the store. I did my usual thing and greeted him, asking if he needed any help. He was really tall. I remember around 6'2", which was intimidating because I'm only 5'1", and had a huge scar on his face. I had a really bad feeling about him, but I can't really refuse help to customers just because they look seedy, so I ignored it. He kinda smiled at me and looked me up and down before asking where our clearance section was. Clearance was located all the way in the back of the store on a weird end cap. I've had plenty of customers get lost on their way there, so I told him I'd show him. While we were walking to the back of the store, he didn't keep a normal distance. I didn't realize how close he actually was until he hissed, "Hey girl, you know, you got a really nice butt," in my ear. I didn't say anything because I had never had a customer be that blunt with me before, and just walked a little bit faster to clearance, pretending I hadn't heard. When I got there, I turned around and he was closer than I expected. He smiled, but it looked predatory. "There any cameras here?" I had such a bad feeling at this point, and I knew every other employee was in the back counting the money. There were no cameras where we were in the back, but there was a fake security camera bubble near us, so I pointed to it. In a shaky voice I said, "Yeah, there are a few." His face fell. He looked angry. I wordlessly walked back to my counter, keeping an eye on him so he couldn't sneak up on me. Finally, he came back up front. He didn't buy anything, but slid across the counter to whisper to me, "Are there any cameras up here, sweetheart? Would anyone be able to see if I did anything to you right now?" I looked above us at the actual security cameras, and a little too desperately said, "Yes, we have a monitored system. There are cameras right here." He looked a little angry again, but shook his head and didn't move further away. "Fine," he growled. "How about I come back some other time then, and find you when there are no cameras? Then you'll see what I do to you." I was terrified, because I didn't have a car yet. Sometimes I had to wait for my ride for a few minutes outside after we closed. Our lot cameras suck, so I knew that if he waited, there was a good chance he could actually find me in a place with no cameras. I gaped at him and he eventually walked out, looking smug. I called my manager, begging him or one of the floor employees to come and sit with me until the store closed, which he refused, so I was left alone for the last 15 minutes. The store closed normally and no one was waiting outside, thank God. I made sure to tell some co-workers about the incident in case something came of it, even though I was off for the 2 days after it happened. When I came back to work, another manager, one that I was better friends with, pulled me into the office and pulled up our cameras, showing me a video of the guy. "Hey, is this your dude?" he asked. I nodded, and he frowned. "He's come in the past 2 nights looking around the store for you." I didn't even know what to say. Being threatened was one thing, but knowing that he was actually looking for me was another. Thankfully, management made sure not to leave me alone after that, because God forbid anything was to happen to a minor, and the dude never actually came in again. I still work at the same store as a manager now. Nothing much phases me anymore, because loads of weird crap happens in retail. But I do wish I knew whether he was just trying to scare the crap out of me or if he was actually planning something. Either way, Scarface was a little too concerned about camera locations. Let's not meet again. Sometimes you're the hero of your own story. Sometimes you're just a side character and only realize it at the end. Boys and girls, I present to you the Ballad of Creepy Kyle. Kyle was kinda chubby, with a buzz cut that was thinning on top and a sad little attempt at a mustache on his lip. He was in his 40s or 50s and just looked like someone's creepy uncle. The restaurant I worked in at the time was family owned and rather small. Kyle didn't have enough money to order most of the food on the menu, so he'd order an iced tea or some other beverage and sit for hours at the same table. Seeing as the restaurant was so small, that meant you had to bus your own tables, so getting Kyle in your seating was a special brand of hell. It didn't help that he wouldn't leave more than $1 tip, no matter how much he claimed to like the service. We were all favored with his affections at one point or another, things he would do across the board, touch you on the arm a lot while ordering, talking 20 to 30 times a minute, pull ponytails, tuck his tip directly into your pocket, etc. If you made eye contact, he was your best friend for life. God help you if you smiled at him. Since he was never rude or short with us, we thought he just had no social awareness and wrote him off as harmless. Alice knew better. Alice was 19, blonde, and petite. Poor girl became the focus of Creepy Kyle's affections. He would always make some excuse to stand by the hostess podium so he could talk to her. He never said anything overtly sexual, but you could tell he was hitting on her and not letting her work. We would always have to tell him to leave her alone, because new people had come in and she couldn't seat them with Kyle chewing her ear. The management refused to do anything about it because he hadn't crossed a line that they saw, so poor Alice had to suffer in silence. Things escalated over a period of a few months. He sent alcohol to the hostess podium. May I remind you that Alice is on the job and 9 freaking teen. He told another server that my short hair was cuter and that her hair should be short too. He whipped a pair of scissors out of nowhere, seriously couldn't see where he had been keeping them, and playfully mimed cutting a lock of her hair. The server playfully ran away and hid in the back while we dealt with him. He surprised me in the bathroom. We had no public restrooms, so the waste spots basically had to go in this little closet beside the kitchen. I was washing my hands and screamed when I saw him in the mirror. He was all like, the door was unlocked, when he shouldn't have even been there in the first place. I was shaking while I reported it to the manager, who told me to take my 10. Kyle was still there when I came back, so I just went home. He also kept trying to bring us food from other restaurants. This is more what the crap than creepy, but the fact was that none of us were ever going to sample anything that had been through his hands first. It was actually a lot worse for Alice at the time, but none of us knew it because she kept mum about the stuff that happened outside the restaurant. He had somehow obtained her phone number and was calling her up to invite her out to sport events and other stuff like that. Sometimes he would hang around after the restaurant closed to try and see her. Usually one of us would give her a lift to her bus stop, as she had no car and there was no way we'd let her go alone. One day he was at the bus stop waiting for her, and the person giving her a lift drove away before she spotted him. When the bus was late, she decided to ditch the stop and walk. He decided that meant they were walking together and followed her for half an hour. She was scared of telling him to leave, so she tried outrunning him. He always caught up. Finally, she ducked inside a store and called one of the other servers to take her home. Crap hit the fan over the course of 2 days. Day 1. I was walking down the street with my earbuds in. I was doing some lazy Saturday shopping, mostly just walking around and enjoying the sunshine. Someone honked at me. Kyle's been driving alongside me for God knows how long in a dirty orange pickup truck. I just stand there like a frozen deer while he teases me about how loud my music was. Then he says, "Hop in the truck, sweetie. I'll give you a ride." I couldn't do anything but shake my head. I quickly ducked into the nearest store and stayed there for 2 hours. I would go browsing in the aisles farthest away from the door, then check out the window every once in a while. I think he kept circling, because sometimes the truck was there and sometimes it wasn't. After he left, I ninja'd my way to the car and promptly drove to a friend's house and stayed there for hours. Day 2. Guess who's seated in my section? I hadn't had a chance to tell anyone about yesterday, so they saw no problem with pawning him off on me. My insides fill with dread as I give this piece of crap his complimentary water and prepare for hours of creepitude. Instead, Kyle hands me this large envelope and tells me to give it to Alice. It's pink and has ribbons printed on it, so it looks like a wrapped present. I'm surprised I even managed to pick it up. My skin was crawling so bad. Kyle gets up and leaves at that point, so I'm almost relieved. I didn't really want to give the envelope to Alice. I didn't learn what was in it until much later, and I still feel guilty about it today. After I knocked off, I handed the envelope to Alice and explained the situation, telling her it was probably best not to open it. She did after I was gone. It was a hardcore porn mag. He'd circled one of the model's face in Sharpie, writing that looked just like her and she should come to his place for a photo shoot. Alice sat down with the managers and laid everything out for them. The managers basically told her it was more trouble than it was worth to deal with the police and that it was really her problem. Alice quit that night. None of us heard from her after that, so I really hope she just pulled stakes and ran and isn't just in Kyle's basement right now. After she left, Kyle kept coming in, so the servers basically banded together and told management that if they didn't ban him, we would walk out together. During Sunday brunch, that finally got their attention. Kyle would still try to come into the restaurant and talk all buddy-buddy with us, and we'd immediately turn him away at the door. Thankfully, he'd leave without a fuss. I didn't get the full story for some time, and when I did, it scared the crap out of me. Like the guy who verbally assaulted me at the bakery, I was only part of someone else's horror story and regret I didn't do more to protect them. So Kyle, get out and stay out. Hey guys, I'm sorry this one's a little late. We've had a bit of a rough week around here at my house. We've had 2 family friends die this week. Yes, you heard that right, 2, and it's been horrible. My dog even died last week. It was just all of a sudden. It's just been really rough time. But I had the stories recorded, so I thought I'd put together the video whenever I noticed it was Thursday. My days and nights have been all mixed up ever since Maggie died, my dog. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm sorry it was late. Hopefully things will calm down around here. And just have a great day, have a good week, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Just go put that out there again. Stay spooky, my friends.